You're listening to the Small Business Tech Podcast, brought to you by Frontpoint-IT, Utah's premier managed services provider. Visit us online at www.frontpoint-it.com.
I'm Dan Stanford.
And I am Jeremy Wright.
Welcome to our Small Business Tech Podcast today, brought to you by Frontpoint. Let's start off with a little bit of news. I guess the biggest news right now is Apple will be holding an event on September 9th, I believe it is.
Correct.
And we are expecting a new iPhone, a new Apple TV, and possibly even new iPad, or at least an iPad mini is the talk.
Yeah, we're probably going to see the iPad Pro is the rumor.
That's the big one, right?
Yes, that's going to be
12-inch something.
Like a 12.9, I think, is what they're rumored to be, is a 12.9 inch. There's also rumors about the change of the iPhones. Like, supposedly the batteries are going to be worse than the last generation. They're going to do smaller ones, which means that, Apple's not going to deliberately make the batteries worse. They probably have software to counteract that, but that's the talk. The rumor mill is in full swing at the moment.
If I understand right, the new phone, whether it's the 6S or the 7, which I doubt, probably 6S, frankly, knowing their history, I guess it's going to have a better camera in it. Mm-hmm. And I guess the iPad mini, you actually told me just a little bit ago, the Mini 4 will be more like the iPad Airs.
Right.
So it'll be the thinner profile and a little bit nicer in that regard. That's about all I have for news. What do you have, Jeremy?
Well, with the Apple TV, supposedly they're coming out with a new version of it, which we haven't had for about 3 years, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And Apple TVs are awesome because it's kind of like a catch-all for everything. Like, you can do whatever you need to there. One of the big rumors is that it's going to have a new remote that's going to act as a game controller, so you can play games, and it's going to have Siri functions built into it on the Apple TV. And then also a universal search. So you can search for a movie, and it will tell you all the applications where you can find that movie. So if you have it already on Netflix, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. That's like the big deal that everybody's talking about.
It sounds an awful lot like my TiVo I have at home.
Yeah.
It does universal search. But, one thing I would think would be very interesting is if it does 4K, the new Apple TV.
I think they're saying it's going to have the A8 processor, which should be able to handle that.
Okay. Well, they need the new HDMI port, the new, was it version 1.4 or something that can, or no, 2,
Yeah.
version 2.
HDMI 2.
Yeah. They can do the higher bandwidth. What else you got for news?
There's a really cool router that's coming out, if anybody cares.
Yeah, you got a picture of it there. I'm looking at it. It's an Asus router, and the thing looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi horror movie. It has, I don't know how many antennas. It's sleek. 8. Yeah, it looks like an arachnid, like this big old spider monstrosity. You can even turn it upside down so the legs are down and it stands up anyway. But the power of it and the processing, the bandwidth of it is actually impressive beyond its looks.
Interesting fact about Wi-Fi routers, you're supposed to put one of the antennas up and one of them horizontal if you have a dual antenna.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Because most devices work best when they're parallel with the antenna. So if you're holding your cellular telephone, you would want it to be parallel, and then that would be straight up and down. And then if you have a laptop, most of the antennas are flat, therefore it's going to
So most of the Wi-Fi antennas, they kind of send out a more like a great big bubble. It's not a sphere of the radio waves coming off the antenna. They more come out elongated as they come out. So having antennas at 2 different angles would help give it more of a full coverage of everything. What I did want to talk about today was some tips and tricks. This is a little bit outside of what we've normally been doing on the Small Biz podcast, but as I've gone around and met with our clients and talked to them, it's amazing. I can talk to them about kind of the drier business side of it, but as soon as I mention some things that apply to their home life, it's just, people are just absolutely taken by it and fascinated with it and have to know everything about it. So one thing I wanted to start off with right off the bat was iOS family sharing. So your iPads, your iPhones, stuff like that, there is a feature built into it called family sharing, which allows you to share your purchases with the rest of your family. And the purchases the other people in your family have made are shared with you also. So that includes apps, that includes books, that includes movies, that includes songs that you've purchased. They too would have access to all of that information. So no more do you need to buy Angry Birds, 4 or 5 times for everybody in the family. You can buy it once, and then they have access to that purchase, and then off you go. It's quite handy.
It also gives you the ability to approve or deny purchases as well.
Yes, thank you. So the children, you can set whether the account is an adult or a parent or a child account, and the children accounts have to receive approval to make any purchase. So in the family plan, everyone in the family would be using the same credit card. And so any purchase anybody makes would go through that one credit card. The kids would request approval for a particular app. It goes to the parents, and you get a little pop-up on your iPhone, and then you can either approve or deny it. You can see what the request is, etc. And that includes even in-game purchases if you do that for your kids. To set it up is extremely easy. Whoever will be kind of the master account, you just go on your iPhone or iPad or whatever, just go to settings and then go to iCloud, and right there is set up family sharing. And it just walks you through it. It's extremely simple. You pick the credit card that will be on the family plan, etc. And then to add members, you then, again, you go to settings, you go to iCloud, and then you'll have a new selection there called family. And then in family, there will be add family member. And at that point, you add their Apple ID email address. And then it sends an invite to that family member, and then they can accept to be a part of the family or not a part of the family sharing plan. For you adults out there, the parental controls are still very much in force. So if on a child's iPad or iTouch or something along those lines, if you've enabled the restrictions and the parental controls, and you say, for example, no movies above the rating of PG, and no TV shows above the rating of, oh crud, what are the kids' ratings? Anyway,
Y7 or whatever.
Yeah, Y7 or and then same for even music. You can allow or disallow explicit music. Those settings still stay in force. So when a child were to look at, say, your purchases and say your songs and stuff like that, if you disallowed explicit music, those songs just simply don't even show up. And the same goes for books and movies and all that sort of stuff. So that's still in place. Now, the next thing is, how in the world do you use this? So you've set up your family sharing, you got your family members in on it and all that sort of stuff. The way that it works is when a child account goes, in any one of the accounts, you go to iTunes and then you go to purchases. And just see the things that you've purchased. Well, up there you'll see your name, and you select your name, and voila, all of a sudden you see all the members in your family account. And then you can pick a different member of your family, and you can see their purchases. And then everything there is free for you. You just say, I want that game, I want that game, I want that movie, and it's done. Mm-hmm. Very cool, very slick. Highly recommend it. What do you got, Jeremy? What's some cool tricks?
Some cool tricks
or tips?
One of the things that I use frequently that many people are in awe by is something called TeamViewer. I have it installed on all of my computers that I personally own, and then I also have it installed on friends and family computers. And TeamViewer is a free application that allows you to remote control and a variety of other things that, like, you can even set up a VPN between you and another computer if you were so interested in, and you can also do file transfers and those kind of things. What that allows me to do is basically offer the typical child parent support type thing. If your mom or your grandmother calls you and says, I need help with this, you can easily log onto their computer and just see what they're trying to do rather than trying to talk them through it. I also use it for a variety of other things as well. When I'm at work and I needed something from home, like, oh crap, I was working on this, I left this window open and I can't log into it from, while I'm logged in there, I can easily close it. It works really well for just gaining remote access. There's also applications for both the iPhone and the iPad as well. So you can remote control a computer from your iPad if you needed to. And this is not an application that requires you to be a technical genius to do, or a wunderkind or anything like that. It's just a very simple interface to use, and you can see all of your computers on the right side that you have, and it tells you if they're online or if they're offline. So it could work great for a parent who is interested in keeping tabs on their child while they're at home. If they're not supposed to be on the computer, it pings you and says such and such computer is online, and then you can easily see what they're doing and kick them off the computer or whatever you need to do there. So it's a very cool program. It comes in handy a lot when I need it, and I like it. It works very well. We also use it here as like an emergency or a backup sometimes if we have to, and it is cross-platform, so you can remote control a Macintosh from a Windows PC or vice versa, and I think it is a fantastic program.
And it is free for home use, is it not?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I've got another tip. Windows 7 and Windows 10 in a home environment, so in the workplace environment, it doesn't work, but in the home environment there are parental controls. Again, for kids, that seems to be the focus of a lot of my tips today. But you can do all sorts of neat things on, say, if your kids have a computer that they share amongst themselves, you can do things like they can only log on between certain hours, they can only be on the computer for so long. You can restrict their web browsing, what they can and cannot go to. You can go so far as to say, they can only go to this website or that website. There's a lot of neat little features in there, and that is in Control Panel, and then under User Accounts, and then it's Parental Controls, something to that effect. I would look into that. It's rather handy, and if your child runs out of time, it comes up with a little timer and tells them, you've only got 10 more minutes, and then eventually it just boots them off. As a parent, knowing the master password, you can go over and you can grant them more time. So, when that happens to my kid, it'll be, okay, well, how are we doing on our chores, etc., and say, oh, well, okay, I'll give you another half an hour. And then they, off they go, and they're just happy campers.
In that same vein, most internet service providers, I know Comcast has it built in. I'm not sure about Quest or some of the others, or CenturyLink, sorry, whatever it is now. You can actually block specific devices from getting online after certain times. You can set timers and access hours for specific devices as well as websites as well. So you can say, well, all these computers can get to any website, but this one cannot. This one can only go to these websites, or blacklist specific ones. If your kid thinks they're sneaky or something and you block them from getting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever the kids do these days, you can easily block that specific website on devices specifically. It's a little more of an advanced thing to do, but it can be done relatively easy.
Correct. That's done through the router, I believe.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that one, depending on your model of router and stuff like that, would be slightly different instructions. But you could, I bet you if you started Googling it and you knew the model and started looking into it, I bet you somebody's got instructions out there for your individual case.
I would think that the ISP, like Comcast themselves, would probably have a tutorial on their website. And their support too. I mean, if you're paying for their service, they may or may not be helpful depending.
A tip to get your photos off of your phone. Everybody walks around with their smartphones and takes pictures all the time. You go to a kid's soccer game or anything else along those lines, and those cameras are just going nuts. So what is an easy way to get those photos off of your device? I would recommend Dropbox. It is a free service. You just go to Google Dropbox and sign up for an account. I believe you can even do it right on your smartphone itself. You just get the Dropbox app, And then Dropbox has the ability to sync or download your pictures off of your phone. And that's great. And then that moves it into your Dropbox cloud account. So now it's in Dropbox in their storage location. You can then install Dropbox on your computer or your Mac, and it syncs again, and voila, you have all of your pictures sitting right there on your PC. You can print them away, email them off, whatever it is that you want to do with them.
Now with Dropbox, though, you only get 2 gigabytes for free, if I recall.
Yeah.
I use something similar but different. I use OneDrive, the personal version of OneDrive for your phone. It's from Microsoft, so somebody you trust. And you can, if you have an Office 365 license, a personal one, you get 1 terabyte of storage for free. Or there's other ways to get free storage. Like if you do like 25 Bing searches, you can get like 100 gigs for free and things like that. They have all sorts of stupid ways to try to get you to use their products. But I have the OneDrive application, and it allows me to automatically back up all of my photos from my phone.
I was going to say that it does have the automatic.
So I take a picture
Cool.
and it backs it up. So I literally keep 0 photos on my phone, except for something I may need. And then the rest of them all just get uploaded just directly to OneDrive. And it does the auto backup. And then there's also applications for iPad. There's applications for the computer, and you can access it via a website as well. That way I can get it from anywhere. I mean, that's how I do the majority of any documents I need to. I use OneDrive. And the advantage to OneDrive would be that it integrates with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all of those things so that you can easily access your files. If you have like a Word document or whatever it may be in OneDrive, you can easily open it up in those things through the same interface.
If you were using Windows 8, 8.1, or 10, and you signed on with the same Microsoft account into your computer, your OneDrive would automatically be there with everything done. Very quick and easy. I suspect, by the way, that Google and Google Drive probably has the exact same functionality.
Yes.
So there's lots of ways to skin that cat. Kind of pick your poison where you want to go with it. They're all very useful, very easy to use.
In that same
Programs.
vein, you can kind of use OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever as a backup solution to a degree, as in it will back up your data. It keeps it somewhere off of your computer. But there are a few other options for people who want a more traditional backup, like Carbonite or Mozy.
Yes.
They will do an automatic backup of your whole computer or whatever files you choose. They will back it up somewhere. The disadvantage to that would be that you don't have access to them. You have to kind of look at it a little bit differently when you're using a cloud service like Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive. Your computer is not where those things are stored versus when you're doing like a traditional backup like Carbonite or Mozy. Your things are stored on your computer and backed up somewhere else. When you're using OneDrive or Dropbox, your things are stored in Dropbox or OneDrive, and you're using your computer to access them. It's a little bit more of a disconnect.
Correct. All right. Next one, we had a request from a particular gentleman named Joseph. Hello, Joseph. Regarding running Xbox at the office. So the new Xbox, well, let me digress for a moment. So Windows 10 is going to be moving to Xbox eventually. And so everybody's Xbox One out there will be running Windows 10 also. And they added some cool new functionality where you can remote control basically your Xbox from your computer. So the intent of it is you can sit down at your PC at your home and actually play an Xbox game off of your Xbox itself. So you take your little Xbox controller, you can plug it into your computer. It has to be wired in at the moment into the USB port, and then you can sit back and play away on your PC, your PC monitor and all that when it's actually running off of the Xbox. So Mr. Jeremy here took that ability and stretched it out a little bit and figured out how it was possible to extend that all the way to your office.
Well, I kind of did it as a proof of concept because when I did it, it's not really playable, as in you press a button and literally you can count to 1 second before the input gets transferred to the Xbox. because that's a lot of information to be going both ways at the same time. Because you have the video coming from the Xbox being transmitted across the internet, and then you have your input being sent over to the Xbox across the internet as well. And that's happening simultaneously. And even though the internet travels at the speed of light, there are bottlenecks, and therefore you're going to have some what we call latency, which is a difference in the when you put something in versus when it gets output by whatever the other device is. So what I did was you have to have the computer that has Windows 10 on it that you want to play Xbox on the same network as your Xbox.
So at home, for example.
Correct.
Yep.
So your Xbox is plugged into your home network, and then your other computer is plugged into your work network. And so basically you have to find a way to get your computer at work onto your home network. And the way I did that was using a VPN, which is a virtual private network. And Windows 8 computers and higher you need a Windows 10 computer at home, really is what it should be. Windows 8 PCs and higher have the ability to have a new incoming connection. You can use that computer to facilitate a VPN. So I set up a new incoming connection on my computer at home, and what that did was that allowed me to VPN into that. You have to set up a specific user, and you have to have the right passwords and the right settings, services active for that to work.
You would have had to have configured your router too.
Yes, correct.
To allow that connection to get across your home
So then
router.
I have to log into my router, and then the router I have to say, okay, I'm going to forward these ports to this particular thing. And the ports that it is, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's the ports for PPTP, so point-to-point tunneling protocol.
Is TCP 1723.
What he said.
And then possibly you'd have to also forward a particular protocol called GRE, which can be a real challenge. So it is not, it's a bit of a stretch. And like you said, it's proof of concept. But keep going, Jeremy.
But what I would, and then so then you forward those ports to that computer, and then you have to find your outside IP address. So you can just hop on your computer at home and Google, what is my IP? And it will tell you your outside IP address. And then you type that into the new VPN connection on the computer that you have in your office. And that's where you set it to. And basically what happens is the information that you're trying to send gets sent through the router to that computer, and then you make that connection. It's overly complicated for what we're trying to do, and it doesn't really work very well, so I wouldn't recommend it. The real way to do it would be to do like a hardware VPN, would be to have a device at your office that is connecting directly to a device at your house. So the router at your house or the modem at your house would be the one facilitating that VPN, the one that's allowing access to that network. That'd be the real way to do it. And even then, I'm not sure on how well it would work. I just mostly did it as a proof of concept because I thought it was fun.
I think the internet inherently has lag in it, and it isn't entirely designed to be extremely, within millisecond, response times, which is what you would need with an Xbox. So the idea is you take your office PC, you establish a VPN to your home PC, and then from there you could, using the Xbox, app and stuff like that on the PC at your office, then eventually make it to your Xbox and then run it. He's done it here. I've seen him do it. It is awful laggy and pretty much not playable.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it this way. So when you're playing a multiplayer online game, whatever, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Destiny, whatever game that a lot of the processing power is not taking place on your Xbox, they have a server that you're connecting to, and everybody always complains about lag because there's a latency between your input from your Xbox and what their servers are processing. If they can't do it and they have millions of dollars and lots of employees and people that are working to try to limit this as much as possible, the odds of you being able to do it with consumer hardware is very low. I mean, that's the easiest way to think about it.
But it is kind of fun. I mean, the concept of sitting there at the office, with your Xbox controller and actually be able to play.
By the time you bought enough hardware to do it, it would be easier just to buy another Xbox and just put it in your office.
Yeah, there's a good point. Yep. Okay, home Wi-Fi encryption. Please make sure that your home Wi-Fi networks are encrypted, that they are secure. When you go to connect your home Wi-Fi network, if you don't see that little lock symbol and it doesn't ask you to enter a password, you have a problem. There are a bazillion different wireless access points out there in this world. So I can't even begin to tell you how to set up each individual one. But grab the manual, look it up, and figure out how to set up your Wi-Fi password. For the most part, you go into the wireless security settings, and then inside there, you give it the password for your Wi-Fi network. That keeps people out of your wireless network, that are near your home.
If you have the modem or wireless router from your internet service provider, CenturyLink, Comcast, etc., 90% of the time they're already set up with a password, and it's a pretty good one. Usually it's not like ABC 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, something like that. It's usually a complicated password. And so if that's the case, you're probably good. But if you have an auxiliary device that you're using that you purchased from Target, Walmart, Best Buy, or whatever, there's a 50-50 chance that it's not set up to be secure.
Yep, you need to be aware of that, and you want to make sure that that's done. Of course, I know of a company that would be happy to help you, being us. Next tip would be to always make sure, I went over this our last podcast, always make sure that you search for a website that you want to visit. Please don't, type in a website making your best guess at it. I want to go to AT&T, or I want to go to KSL, or I want to go to, Ford and look at trucks or something to that effect. Please don't go in and start typing in the www address yourself. You should always go to Google or Bing or Yahoo. Pick your poison and do the search from there, and just search for Ford or search for AT&T. It will bring up the proper website for you, and then go from there. Because again, like I said in the last podcast, people out there know that people will make mistakes typing in those addresses. They will buy those websites, and you will end up in places or with viruses or malware on your computer. Just make sure that you are going to the places that you really want to go to. That alone will save you a lot of money in cleaning up your computer and removing garbage off of it. And of course, the potential of identity theft and stuff like that, where people are getting the information that you don't want them to have.
In that same vein, be very careful when you're searching for programs. When you're trying to find a program, I will tell you right now that the majority of programs that are free out there are not what you're looking for. It's really counterintuitive, because there's a lot of free apps that you can get on iPhones or iPads or on Android devices, but there's not a whole lot of free applications that are worthwhile that go on PCs.
Correct.
This is changing. There are some very good free ones out there, like Google Chrome, for instance, and all of those things. But when you're downloading those, make sure you're downloading them from Google, not from easydownloads.net. Or you don't go to that website, by the way.
Adobe Acrobat's a big one too. Make sure that you are getting Adobe Reader from Adobe, not bestdownloads.com or something like that. You will not be happy with the result of that.
Even then, watch when you're downloading and installing, like Google Chrome, for instance, or Adobe Acrobat, when you're installing Adobe Reader, it even tries to download Chrome and Google Toolbar automatically. Uncheck those boxes when you're downloading and installing things.
Yeah, just be careful. There is no free lunch out there.
Mm-hmm. Hey Dan, why do small businesses need servers?
That is a great question. That's one that we've been coming up against a few times lately. It really goes to the fact that Windows PCs need structure for their security and the way that they function in a business environment. Without a server, you lose that structure. To get techie, it's called Active Directory. And without Active Directory and without that security structure, the PCs are left on their own, and they revert to a home environment. So what happens is without a server, every PC is on its own. It has its own usernames and passwords for things that it wants to connect to. What we typically see is in the past, as small businesses have grown up and become larger, is Sally over in the corner has her computer, and she sets up a share and allows people to access her PC. Well, there's 5 other people out there in that office, and they want to access her computer, so she has to set up on her computer accounts for all 5 of those people. Well, Joe over there changes his password one day. Well, now Joe can't access Sally's computer because Sally's computer doesn't have that updated password. Well, Joe decides, you know what, I'm just going to set up a share myself and let people access me. And then he sets up accounts for all the other people in the office on his computer so that they can access his computer, and just keep going with this slippery slope that I'm on. And you can see that it becomes nightmarishly complex very, very fast, where you have people sharing out information all over the place, usernames and passwords, just a spaghetti mess everywhere. And it turns into things like, well, sometimes I can access Joe's computer and sometimes I can't. And sometimes, Sally over there can access this. It just simply doesn't turn out well. Additionally, every single computer is kind of an island into itself, and all of its settings are unique to that computer. There's no way to set a standard within the office of how things ought to be done. That is what a server will bring to the table with Active Directory. It allows all the computers to simply sign on to the server, and then they have their credential, they have their username and password, and then they can go out from there. The server also allows you to set standards for configuration among the PCs, and you can easily, say, we are going to implement this level of security, say with the firewalls on the computers, or we are going to allow this website to be accessed and not this website. All of those sorts of things can be done through through the server in-house. It really becomes imperative, even for a small business and even for companies that are starting to move into the cloud and starting to move their data up there. They're all starting to, we're starting to get thoughts from our clients of, well, why do we even need a server in-house at all? Well, for the reasons that I just explained, and there are a few programs out there that do not work well with the cloud. QuickBooks is one in particular. There is QuickBooks Online, the cloud version, but it does not have the functionality of the desktop version. So there's still very relevant cases to be made for having a server in-house. The good news is, as people move more and more into the cloud, these servers do not need to be these big, hulking, expensive beasts anymore. They can be reduced in their power and in their expense. But some other, I'm trying to think of some other reasons. Printing is another massive one. You can set up the print queues or the printers off of the server itself, and then everybody connects to the server and then they can print. Without that feature, every PC is on its own to know where the printers are and to connect to them. Rather than having a very simple, okay, I need to connect to the server, there's the printers, I select it, I print, done. It's, what's the IP address of that printer again? Okay, what's the make and model? All right, we need to go get that driver. How do I set this up? It becomes quite a challenge to set up each PC to print, especially when there are multiple printers in the office. It just becomes exponentially more and more difficult. What are your thoughts, Jeremy?
I'm an advocate of getting rid of servers in businesses, but not getting rid of all of them and or moving them to the cloud, because you can easily move an actual physical server to a virtual server in the cloud.
Yeah, true.
And I'm an advocate of that because I think that when you have too many, if you don't need them, I think there are plenty of businesses that do need a lot of servers in-house, and they need multiple servers for multiple things, and that's totally fine if they want them. However, I'm also an advocate of moving them out of the office and moving them somewhere else if necessary, because you can easily say, I want to be able to downsize this server, and you can only pay for the processing power that you need out of that server, rather than having to pay upfront for a huge server that's going to do tons of things. You can say, well, let's see how much we actually use by putting it in the cloud.
The cost case for moving a small business server into the cloud. That one is a little bit of a tricky one because you can spend, say, $2,000 for a server, which will give you 5 years, where with the cloud you'll end up spending, let's say $200 a month to have that server up in the cloud. So on that regard, it's cheaper to have the server in-house, but you do need to start thinking about things of backup and maintenance, where when it's in the cloud, you don't need to worry about those things quite as much.
Right. It's an interesting point that businesses are at with that, because some businesses are able to operate entirely without servers, but like you said, it comes with great cost.
Yes.
Of financially. But at the same time, there's some businesses that are even more in need of a server than they were before.
Correct. And it comes down to that structure and ease of administration. That needs to be considered when companies are playing around with the idea of getting rid of their servers. They need to realize that the complexity of their network is actually going to increase. And any particular cost savings that they think that they can realize by not purchasing a $2,000 server can very easily vanish on them.
You can get servers for Mac as well. There's a lot of people out there who have Macs and they think, I don't need a server because I have an Apple computer. But you can get a server that is Mac, and it's actually very inexpensive for the actual license for the software. You still have to have a computer to put it on, but the software itself is relatively inexpensive, and you can do the same sort of things limited as you can with the Windows server. There's a little bit less functionality on there, but you can do the shares and you can do things like that easier.
Print queues.
Yep, exactly. Because print queues on a Mac is a huge thing for some of our clients who have half and half Windows PCs and half, Mac PCs.
Okay. That's about all I've got, Jeremy. Do you have anything else?
I wanted to talk about email.
You want to talk about email?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So I've seen, the other day I was driving down by, I was over in the Highland area in Salt Lake, and I saw this little copy shop, like where they do like Kinko's basically, but it was like a family-owned type one.
Yeah. And
on the banner, it said, submit digital stuff to such and such copy at integra.net. And every time I see that, it's just like a nervous tick in the back of my head that drives me absolutely crazy. I cannot stand when a business does not own a domain name and have a proper email address.
I mean, a domain name runs a whole $30 a year to own.
For a kind of expensive one. I mean, some of them you can get for $9 or $10 depending. Yeah. Usually it's $30 for like 7 years. But I want to talk about what are the options for email for people and the importance of having like a personal email address as well as a business email address. I think it's wrong to use a business email address for personal things.
Yes.
But I think that people are at home. It's perfectly okay to purchase a domain name, for instance, yourname.com or something along those lines, and have an email address of that, especially for people who are perhaps creative types and or people who do freelance work. If you're an accountant that does freelance work or you're an architect that does freelance work, something along those lines, you should have an email address that is, jeremy@jeremywright.com, which I can't buy jeremywright.com. Whoever owns that, stop. It's not even hosted anywhere. Anyways, there's a couple of different options for people for businesses that want email. Email has become very inexpensive. You can either purchase your own in-house email server, which would be the most expensive option you can do.
Yes.
That's totally cool if you want to be able to have that in your office and be in control of that and be in charge of the security and the safety of that all to your own devices. That's totally cool to do. And it can be advantageous for companies with over 25 to 30 employees, I would say, somewhere in there. Some
that have, particular government regulations about security and that they find it helpful.
Or you can find a third-party company that will have Exchange for you. If only we knew somebody that did something like that.
We do it.
We do that here. We do it. What's our... I don't know what our average cost is on a mailbox. Depends on a number of factors. But if you have any questions about that, feel free to call us. We will be more than happy to set up Exchange for you. And there's a couple of different types of email as well. We have Exchange email, which is probably the best one in my opinion.
Agreed.
There's POP and IMAP, which are more of ways of talking to an email server of some kind.
But POP and IMAP, oftentimes when you buy a domain name, it's actually thrown in for free.
But there's limitations on how well they work and things like that.
Very much.
One of the best options, in my opinion, now is Office 365 and Exchange Online.
Agreed.
So I personally own a couple of domain names. One of them is jeremywright.me because that was the one that I could get. And so I have an email address that's info@jeremywright.me. And that website is absolutely nothing, by the way, so don't go there. But I think there's maybe a few random videos from YouTube on there about video games or something. Regardless, but I pay $6 a month for an Office 365 business license. And that's a small business license or something like that. I can't remember which one it is.
It's got to be the essentials.
Yeah,
It's
so I
a
get
$6 one.
the installed versions of Office as well as Exchange Online for that email address.
Okay. Yeah.
So for $6 a month, I'm able to have that email address. And this would apply to a business as well. So if you are a small business and you need an email address for like 3 people, that could be a viable option, would be to do something like that, Exchange Online, or we could probably do it for around that same price or a little more or a little less depending on the day.
Agreed. So any small business out there, there's really not a good excuse for having a terrible email address. And the idea, of course, would be, going back to our last podcast also about, the website. You have your website, you have your domain name, go ahead and let's set up those email addresses. A lot of the email hosts or web hosts will give you free email, the POP and stuff like that. But I'll tell you right now, with the smartphone proliferation and iPads and stuff like that, you run into POP limitations very, very fast. Sorry, POP is a email protocol. It's a way of accessing your email, where Exchange or Microsoft Exchange is a far superior, much, much more robust means of accessing your email.
It's a real enterprise-grade email. Really.
Correct. And what it does is it synchronizes all of your devices together. So if you delete an email on any one of those devices, it's instantly deleted everywhere else. If you reply to an email on one device, you will see in the sent items on every single other device, your PC, your Mac, your iPhone, your iPad, that you reply to it. Everything is kept in order, and that includes calendar and contacts and all that sort of stuff. So there's huge advantages for using Exchange, and that's the basics. Exchange can do all sorts of other very clever things. But yeah, Office 365 or other third-party providers like us, we're more than happy to do it. One advantage of going with a third-party provider that's in town is you can actually talk to the person who sets up the Exchange server himself, for example, me, and we can give you a much more customized approach to your email. We can really help you with the migration and all those sorts of things, and do a little bit, give you a better feel for what you're purchasing versus 365 and just a web interface and you're done.
And there's no reason that you should have an email address that is not at yourcompany.com, because you don't want to be handing out business cards that say bobtheplumber777@gmail.com or at hotmail.com or AOL or Yahoo. That's terrible. You don't want to be, it doesn't look professional, and for the cost of it, the trade-off is not there. How much it costs is so little compared to what it can do for you. Just that image that when you hand somebody a business card that says bob@bobsplumbingcompany.com just looks so much better than, like I said, bobtheplumber55 whatever @gmail.com.
And speaking of Bob the Plumber out there, you may think, what does it matter? I'm not on the internet anyway. Nobody's really searching for me. I almost never get emails, stuff like that. Well, it's guys like us, and increasingly more and more of the population are becoming more tech savvy, and they look at that email address and they go, really? You can't spend a whole $6 a month or maybe $30 a year, to get your own domain name and get a proper email address? How are you going to fix the pipes in my house? Are you going to apply that same policy to my pipes, where you won't spend the extra 10 cents to put on, the proper type of flux while you're working on the pipes? It really does portray an image, and the expense is so minimal, and it's really not, setting up a 365 account is really not a difficult thing to do. And of course, there's others out there. You've got your Gmail proper, your what do they call it? Google Apps,
Google Business Apps, Google for Business.
Yeah,
like
where you can have a proper domain name and use Google in the background. And Google's email functionality with their business apps is almost as robust as Exchange.
They're working on. They're getting there. I think even GoDaddy offers like a free year of Office 365 with the purchase of some domain names or something like that.
Yeah.
You have to look into it though. It's weird, some of the stuff. If you need help navigating that, let us know, because it can get very strange very quickly.
But we are here to help, and I think that wraps it up for us.
Yep, that's all I've got.
So this is brought to you by Frontpoint-IT, your local IT service provider. We do good stuff like unlimited technical support at a flat rate. We like to pitch ourselves as your outsourced IT company. Anything an IT company would normally do for you, that's what we like to do.
But we do it better.
We do it better, yes. We have an entire team. So instead of hiring, say, a person for your company, you have an entire team working for you. And we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. And we can also handle the workload of your company. So you can reach us at www.frontpoint-it.com, and I will see you later.
Thanks for listening.